Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining this webinar session on delivering growth for SMEs this evening. Before I hand over to Chris, who's going to deliver this, I just wanted to give a kind of little bit of background context behind this. The council is using its UK SPF, UK Shared Prosperity funding, to deliver business support, and supporting local businesses is important to us. So we commissioned Branduin and Chris McNeil to deliver these programs to support our businesses to build resilience for selling online and their e-commerce business platforms. We're here to support businesses in any way, shape or form that we can. So please do reach out to us if you have any queries. I'm going to pop our email address into the chat box. It's simply business@brent.gov.uk, but I'll put it in there if anybody has any questions, queries or comments that they want to reach out to the business support team here at Brent Council. Please feel free to do so. But without further ado, I'll hand over to Chris to take you through today's presentation. Over to you, Chris.
Great, terrific, Mark. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Mark. Thank you. This is webinar number 2 as part of that series that we're doing in collaboration with Brent. If you were on the webinar a fortnight ago, you'll probably remember that that was a deep dive into Amazon as a platform. We looked at a number of the areas of best practice of getting listed on Amazon, promoting your products and service on Amazon, why choose Amazon, and so on and so forth. If you missed that for whatever reason, then it was recorded and there is a replay available, which we can post into chat towards the end of tonight's session. This session here is all about other marketplaces. We lead on Amazon, of course, for best practice, but indeed there are some other very interesting and very potent marketplaces available to us as product and service sellers. So we'll be going through those sessions, those examples of various marketplaces tonight over the course of the next hour. And then the third session in a fortnight's time as well, 2 Tuesdays from now, we will be looking at how to take your e-commerce business a step further. We'll be looking at the exciting new world of AI, how to use AI as a tool to help support and accelerate your e-commerce business, and some other benefits and some interesting ways that you can take the business going forward. But I would like to go into our presentation tonight, and that is really looking at some of the other platforms that are available. Now, I'd just like to have a couple of sort of very quick housekeeping notes. I am delivering this webinar from a different location, and in testing just a few moments ago, we have had a few little bits of lag online. So I hope it's not too terribly bad now, but I will be watching the chat periodically. So if people do flag that they can't hear me for whatever reason, then I'm happy just to pause, let the internet catch up, and possibly repeat some things that I might have said that might have gotten lost. Not a problem there whatsoever. The other thing to make mention of is that as part of this series of the 3 webinars, tonight being number 2, there is an opportunity for Brent SMEs to have one-to-one sessions with myself. We have a limited number of slots available. There is a diary booking link, a calendar link that we're going to make available at the end of the session. But please, 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 if you are interested, or if indeed you're watching the recording and you'd like to see if a session is still available, please do click on that link that we'll make available towards the end of the session, and do book with me so that we can look at your e-commerce business and look at what's right for you going forward. So my name is Chris McNeil. By way of introduction, I am Canadian. I've been living in London now for the last 23 years. My background is e-commerce and .com. I founded one of Canada's first .coms back in 1994 in the national capital in Ottawa. And I've been in that world of e-commerce and .com and so forth for about 30 years. This being the 30th year that since the founding of that first business. I'm still very much embedded in e-commerce. I'm an Amazon seller. I sell on a number of other platforms. I have a small team that helps me out, and I do a lot of consultancy as well. In my spare time and kind of part-time, I enjoy delivering walking tours of London, and I'm a freeman of the City of London as well, and am a member of one of the livery companies, one of the ancient guilds that exist in the City of London. Now, we'll go on to have a look at some of the key topics that we'll be covering today in this session. As I say, we're together for about another 50 minutes, but do feel free to pose your questions in chat. Some we'll deal with straight away, others we'll deal with at the end of the session. But if there is something that does come up, do try to remember and make a note of what slide triggered that question, and we may go back and review the contents of that slide in hopes of answering that question. So the key topics that we're covering today, we'll be looking at an overview of the e-commerce landscape beyond Amazon. So the last webinar was about specifically Amazon. This one is about some other platforms that exist outside of the Amazon environment. Now, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of e-commerce platforms around the world, many of which are here in the UK and indeed further afield in continental Europe. We will only be touching on a handful of those just by way of example. But of course, if you do book a one-to-one with me, we can look at the nature of your business, the nature of your product, what it is, or indeed service, what it is that you're trying to achieve with your business, and maybe match you up to the correct webinar that's the correct platform that's right for you. Now, terminology that we're looking at, there's platform and marketplace. So a marketplace, I will define as being a country. UK is a marketplace. The EU is a marketplace. Canada, US, those are marketplaces. Platforms, for the sake of this webinar, we're looking at, for example, Amazon, eBay, Google Shopping, Shopify. Those I'm defining as different platforms. So we'll be looking at those today. Marketplaces for specific verticals, well, there is going to be a little bit of crossover, but we'll have a look at some of those examples. We'll look at Shopify potentially for building an online store. Food delivery platforms such as Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eat. Maybe you've purchased from some of those platforms. Well, what about selling on some of those platforms? Service marketplaces, Fiverr, Upwork, Bark, those are some examples. Social platforms for selling. TikTok is really pushing out a platform where product sellers and eventually service sellers will be able to promote their wares. Multi-channel strategies and logistics considerations. So those are some of the key topics that we'll be covering this evening. So e-commerce marketplaces, as I say, I like to define marketplaces as countries, but indeed we also have platforms which are often used interchangeably. Online platforms enabling digital transactions. That's really what we're talking about here, as opposed to going to an office to buy a service or going to a shop, a physical retail shop on the high street to buy a product. That's really what we're talking about in terms of the e-commerce world. These are used to connect buyers and merchants globally. Okay, there are some local ones, of course. There's some national ones, of course. But also, let's not forget that there are global marketplaces which will allow a seller in one country to conduct business with a buyer in a different country. We often tend to think about the consumer buying from a particular marketplace. As a consumer, I might have a requirement for, I don't know, something for the home or maybe some sporting equipment, and I'll buy on eBay or I'll buy on Amazon. Well, there are a lot of B2B, business to business marketplaces, and indeed B2G, business to government marketplaces as well, and platforms. So that's something to consider. Again, based on the nature of your business. Maybe you don't have a product or service that is appropriate to sell to individual consumers, and you want to be looking at selling to organizations, to corporates, for example. You've got different models, horizontal, niche, and social. So a niche model, for example, might be food, very, very specific food, as compared to an Amazon, which is the everything store. They sell pretty much everything that you can think of. You've got web, mobile, and beyond. So what do we mean by that? E-commerce really started off, 25, 30 years ago, selling on websites, very simplistically back in those days. And certainly it's matured a lot since then. And part of that maturing process has been migrating product over to the digital environment on mobile phones. Think about wish.com. Perhaps you've bought product on wish.com. That is very, very much designated to be the impulse buy. It's very much something that maybe you're in a cafe, you're waiting for a meeting, you're waiting for something to happen. You scroll down on Wish on your mobile, you find a product that attracts you, you click to buy. It's very much designed for that specific purpose. So looking at some of these core platforms, we've got some pros and cons. We went into Amazon in some detail last week. I'll just summarize here. It's got massive reach, hundreds of millions of repeat customers worldwide. And I do mean worldwide, whether we're talking about the Americas, whether we're talking about Europe, the Middle East, India, Asia. There are loads and loads of marketplaces where Amazon is available. There's a consistency within that marketplace. If you're a seller and you log into your dashboard in the Australian marketplace, it's going to pretty much look and feel like the UK dashboard or like the American dashboard. And even multi-language, if you log into your German dashboard, they will be able to translate to English or indeed one of many other common languages. So it looks and feels pretty consistent all the way around the world and across the board. Also, the nature of Amazon, they are striving to be the world's most customer-friendly, customer-centric platform. So that means that if you're a customer, you don't like the product, you have an issue with the product, then Amazon will protect you, will help you out with refunds and that whole process very, very easily. But what that does is it sets the bar very high for us, for sellers, in terms of the responsiveness that we need to offer to clients, to customers, in terms of the level of detail and the quality of images and the amounts that we describe our products when we're listing them online. If we can do all that on Amazon, then chances are we're going to be very, very good at how we list products and how we deal with customers in other platforms. One of those platforms might be Shopify, for example. Shopify has been around for, at least 10 years. They come from my hometown of Ottawa, Canada, actually, and I do believe their headquarters have now moved to Toronto. But they were founded in an office that is about 4 blocks away from where I went to high school back in Ottawa. So quite loyal to them. It's a good product. They enable websites. They help you build a website. They help plug in the commerce behind a website. And they also help you promote your products and services on that website. There is what you gain by using a Shopify is a lot of control. So on Amazon, for example, you as a seller do not own your customer. Amazon owns your customer. However, if you attract a customer onto your Shopify site, you own that customer. So last week we talked about the notion that you could not upsell to a customer. If a customer bought, I think the example that I gave was a red t-shirt, you couldn't send them a message and say, hey, how do you like the red t-shirt? How about buying a green t-shirt now? You can't do that on Amazon, whereas on Shopify you can. You own, in inverted commas, your customer, and you'll be able, within privacy rules and GDPR and so on, you will be able to upsell to that customer. That's one of the big advantages. Big disadvantage is that Amazon is a huge, huge environment which works hard and spends a considerable sum of money to attract customers. You can launch a Shopify site, you can have it absolutely beautiful and all the back end working completely fine, but you will then be responsible for attracting customers to visit that website. And that is an art in and of itself. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in this presentation. The third example that I have on this screen is eBay. Now, eBay has been around pretty much as long as Amazon. They started off as an auction marketplace where people could sell things from home to the highest bidder. You might get lucky and sell that wonderful antique table for hundreds of dollars, thousands of pounds, whatever the case might be. Or you might strike out and you might have a bidder who would get lucky and be able to buy it for $1 or $5, whatever the case is. Now, eBay is more and more an environment of sellers with products that you can obtain in quantity. So these are the products that you might have manufactured perhaps in China or some other factory, and you use eBay as a listing platform for those products alongside maybe some other routes to market. For example, I have a little bit of middleware, a little bit of software that connects my Amazon store to my eBay store. And that little bit of software recognizes when a product has been sold on eBay, sends a signal over to Amazon for that product to be fulfilled from the Amazon warehouses where I keep all my product, and it gets sent out to the eBay customer. So there's a lot of really clever stuff that goes on there, which helps you to automate a lot of that procedure. As sellers, we often think about just how much effort is going to be behind this. What sort of work? How big is our team going to have to be to do all of this? Well, through this automation, there's more and more plugins that handle all that sort of routine stuff, and that frees us up to consider new products for product innovation, maybe marketing, maybe taking a B2C product and taking it to a B2B world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So one question that we're going to have is, if there are dozens, hundreds, thousands of marketplaces out there, which one is going to be right for me? That's part of the evaluation process. And that's not something that we can do in a 1 hour long webinar. We would need to have a conversation about that. And I'd be very happy to understand a little bit more about your business, a little bit more about what you're trying to achieve, and perhaps make some recommendations about some different platforms that you might consider. But very simply, is it a product that you can find in high demand? Well, maybe that's going to be an Amazon or an eBay. Is it something that requires a little bit of customization? Well, maybe that's going to be handmade by Amazon, or a customized service, or maybe a Shopify. Is it something which is food related? Delivery of food. Maybe that's a Deliveroo, an Uber Eats, something like that. Is it a product or service? Maybe you're offering something in accountancy or some other professional service. Maybe that's a bark.com or potentially a fiverr.com. So we don't necessarily have a question of one size fits all. We need to be thinking about your whole business, where you want to grow, and what sorts of products it is or services it is that you're trying to promote, and find the right home for those products. There's the aspect of target size, segment size. If you're a consultancy and the nature of your consultancy is quite detailed, maybe you spend a number of days, a number of weeks supporting a specific project, maybe a business through audit, or maybe a business through some very specific set of recommendations. You might not want a flood of business. Maybe you'll be looking to get 20. You'll be quite happy with that. However, if you have a product, I sell things like fridge magnets and keychains. Well, it's a question I can kind of turn on the taps and have that product come in from China or some other manufacturer in the hundreds, if not the thousands, make them available on Amazon. And I'm quite happy for Amazon to just sell them one after another, after another, after another. And if I can get more stock and if I can acquire more customers, then great. I'm very happy for that to happen in the background. So a conversation needs to be had around that. Etsy. You've probably heard of Etsy. It's a fairly substantial marketplace. It's available in multiple countries. It is really designed for arts and crafts, handmade, customized, maybe shorter runs of product, right? So there's certain criteria there. If you have product that it does not duplicate itself readily. Let's say you make a candle with swirls in it, and that's a handmade product, and somehow you're able to get the wax, 2 or 3 different colors of wax, to make an interesting pattern. Chances are very high that no two candles will look exactly alike. Etsy is a great place for you. There's tolerance there that we know that if I was to buy 2 of your product, I would expect there to be product differentiation. I'm going to Etsy to buy something that's a little bit more handmade, that's a little bit more unique. On Amazon, for example, the expectation is that those products will be factory made and they will look and feel exactly the same. So there's some consideration there about how you might distinguish between an Etsy or an Amazon. And there we have in that blue box, managing irregular inventory. Maybe you have those candles and they're slightly different sizes. Maybe they're a little bit taller, a little bit fatter. They still have the same burn length. They still have the same amount of wax, but they don't quite look exactly the same. Etsy is a good place for you. We're coming back to eBay a little bit. eBay, if you've bought on eBay, you probably know that there are 2 options to buy. One is the auction that I referred to earlier, and another one is the buy it now category. So largely you're competing on price and variety. So chances are, if you've got candles available for sale, there's going to be a lot of sellers with candles available for sale, and indeed international sellers as well. So even though you might be selling only in the UK marketplace, there's going to be a lot of international competition. Have a look the next time you're on eBay and just go browsing. Look at whatever product you have, you manufacture, you sell, and see if that is available on eBay. And have a look at how frequently it's sold, how well it's been selling, maybe what some of the changes are to listings. That will help you get a feel for what eBay is all about. Now, we have a little bit of kind of a question here. Maybe you might like to have a look at this question here and see how this would apply to your business. The title here is Selecting Relevant Secondary Marketplaces. So thinking about diverse e-commerce marketplaces beyond Amazon, it's vital to carefully evaluate alternatives aligned to your business. Consider your target customer segment, the competitive landscape, the product mix variability and resources. So that comes back to, do you have products that easily replicate themselves or are slightly different? Do you have products at all? Do you have services instead? Maybe in your notes, or if you want in chat, could you write down the top 2 alternative marketplaces you would first explore expanding into, and one key reason why each platform matches your situation presently? So we talked about eBay, we talked about maybe Shopify, we mentioned in passing Deliveroo, Uber Eats, some of these. Maybe there's some other ones that you know about. Maybe The Range. That's a large department store chain up and down the country, and they have a marketplace. Boots has a marketplace. B&Q has a marketplace. So maybe you know of one, or maybe you think, gosh, well, the ones that we've listed so far aren't quite for me. Maybe there's something else that we need to be looking at. So have a quick think of that. I'll have a quick look at chat. Do I see any comments so far? Okay. No comments so far. Am I missing anything? Okay, so AK is saying Etsy and eBay. Thank you, AK. Great. Would you be happy to share the nature of your product here, or you don't have to if that's confidential? Okay. So unless there are any questions, I will move on and come back to the screen in a little while. Now, we talked a little bit about Shopify. So there's some really interesting functionality behind Shopify, which allows you control of how your site looks and feels. A lot of these other platforms, the Amazons of the world, the eBays, the Etsys of the world, your product needs to fit into whatever standard template they've created. Now, these are huge companies. They have vast departments looking at SEO, so search engine optimization, looking at heat maps. Where is it that people's eyes travel on the screen, and what do they focus on, and things like that. They look at the back end, what actually happens when you click that buy button, all these different aspects. But the restriction that we have is that as sellers, we need to fit into whatever their platform is. We need to fit into whatever their terms and conditions are for sale. In Shopify, we take a lot more control. Yes, there will be some templates there. Yes, there will be terms and conditions using Shopify or third-party plugins. But really, we have a lot more control to have our presentation match our brand. So you can install your Shopify. You can pay someone, a third-party provider, to install that for you. Maybe you might want to go with someone who has a lot of experience in Shopify installations and ask their help to design what your look and feel is going to look like. Think about what your user journey is going to be like. When a user hits your page, what do they see straight away? What is the value that they're going to get out of making a snap decision either to stay on your site or to bounce off it and go someplace else? What additional information are you providing? How are you categorizing your products? How are you going to upsell to them? What opportunities will you offer to join some sort of marketing list or a newsletter or refer to a blog or things like that? So you get a lot of this control, but it means a greater investment of time and potentially money just in setting up, let alone driving traffic to your Shopify page. You can choose your intuitive themes. And we also have in this comment, you can promote selectively. So you can choose which markets you want to go into, which marketplaces, which socials you want to use. If you're a Twitter user or an X user, you can promote heavily there. Instagram, same thing. You can focus your efforts there. Or maybe you're across a number of different socials and you've got a consolidated communications campaign that goes out to all of them. Instagram. Now, I'm sure that at one point we've all used Instagram. Maybe that's to be, posting a lovely meal that we're having in a restaurant or something like that. Instagram has 2 billion active users. Of course, it gives you that opportunity to include links, profile posts, hashtags, work with influencers, etc., etc. Instagram is far and away the most common social platform of choice, certainly for products. Even for services, you can be speaking your particular service and add comments about that service, flesh out some of that information within the comment section for that post that goes live, adding your hashtags, adding references elsewhere, and so on. It's quite a handy service. And indeed, through the influencer world, you can get others to recommend your products that you've got listed on Instagram. It's a great way of showing your product in different lights, particularly if you're working in an Amazon platform, which is quite restrictive in terms of how you present your product. Yes, there are 9 different slots to present your product picture, but the first product slot, the first product picture slot on Amazon has to have the product filling 80% of the screen, the image, and white background everywhere else. So you don't get a lot of flexibility. The other product images can be lifestyle. So maybe you've got a bit of sporting equipment, well, out in the wild, in a park, on a beach, and wherever, on the ski slopes, you can have that sort of picture. But really, you've got a lot more control over Instagram, and you can be quite spontaneous as well in how you use Instagram to promote your product. I would argue the same for TikTok, but of course, more video in that case. Think about any time you have browsed the internet after clicking on some sort of ad or some sort of website, and you found that site seems to be following you, that product seems to be advertised in various places on other websites that you're investigating, that you're working with. That's what they call pixel installation for the purposes of retargeting or tracking. There is a way to do that on Facebook where in your ad, you install with dot, basically, that's on your screen. That dot is called a pixel. It's got some information behind it. And Facebook will remember that and will kind of follow you through your user journey on the internet. Wherever you happen to be, if there is a space for an advertisement, and if a product is advertising effectively as part of that ad network, then that advertisement advertising that product will appear on that other website. So this is something that you might want to consider in terms of your Facebook component. Build out your page, build out a brand, keep your retargeting active and on, and that will help you build out a custom audience that you will then be able to promote your products to in various ways, not just in the advertising that I've just indicated, but think about using Facebook or indeed other platforms to build lists and market to those lists and advertise to those lists. Okay, moving on. TikTok. Here we see that the consumer spending on this app has eclipsed, what is that, $6 trillion? Is that can't be right. It's $6 billion. Huge amount of money, absolutely huge amount of money there. TikTok has a rapidly maturing seller platform. I'm sure we've all seen advertisements, and maybe some of us have bought product or services from TikTok. But think about the power of TikTok if you're a TikTok user, and how you can actually integrate your product, your services into the TikTok environment and promote that using all of the tools, all the filters, all of the tagging that the platform actually operates. Onboarding onto TikTok is two different experiences if you're a general user, a consumer, versus if you're a seller. Consumer, relatively easy. Email, you install an app, a couple of clicks around preferences, maybe around age, that sort of thing, and then you're a TikTok user. As a seller, you have a lot more hurdles to go through because they are quite keen on verifying the authenticity of sellers. So there's additional KYC, know your customer documentation. So basically ID documentation, your driver's license, passport, that sort of thing, that you need to supply to them as part of the onboarding process. And then there is a sophisticated process of setting up your shop and setting quantities and setting how you're actually going to bill and charge and receive funds from sales, et cetera, et cetera. Do think about this. Think about what sort of product would be best on TikTok. What fun can you have with your product? How can you promote your product to a larger, huge marketplace? How can you promote a service? It is a maturing marketplace, so they are gradually onboarding, first of all, products, but then initially, and then going on with services. Also, there are some restrictions around foods. So they're looking at working with various local jurisdictions to make sure that whatever they allow for food will be compliance with local health and safety rules. So I'm not quite sure where they are with that right now, but that's something that we can certainly discuss if you have a food product that you do want to be selling on TikTok. Incidentally, at the bottom of all of these, we do have a few links that will take you on to third-party blogs that will help explain a little bit more about how to onboard onto each one of these platforms. Now, another little question, you might want to make your private notes or indeed share the answer in chat if you feel appropriate to do so. Think about developing a social media plan, okay? I made the reference earlier, going to a nice restaurant and taking a picture of a lovely meal. As consumers, we are quite accustomed to doing that on the fly. We'll take a picture, everyone's got a phone with them, and post it on some sort of social media platform. Might be a TikTok, might be an Instagram, might be a Facebook. We might have an established community. Oh, look, friends and family, what do you think about this, et cetera, et cetera. But when you're a business, this needs to be thought through a lot more. You need to be thinking in terms of communications plans. It's great to have a little bit of that off the cuff, ad hoc type of posts that you make. But what if you're someone like me who gets quite excited about doing things for a stretch of time, and then other things get in the way? When it comes time for statutory filings, or when it comes time to sort out a customer problem, or when it comes time to maybe do some research and development into new products, or think about advertising, or maybe even go on holiday. All that advertising kind of stops and slows down, doesn't it? So think about what your plan is. Think about what platforms you want to be on. Think about what message you want to have consistently through the year, and plan all this stuff out. Build it into a grid. An Excel spreadsheet will be fine. This week, I plan to have 3 posts across 4 different platforms, and the purpose is something. What is that something? Is it to attract traffic? Is it to grow your brand? Is it to generate sales? Whatever that purpose might be, that action, that activity should have a purpose on the other side of it. So, getting into this question, social platforms like Instagram and TikTok are key channels for driving branded traffic and sales. Reflect on your target audience, your brand style. Your brand might be very different from mine. Maybe you're a very outgoing person and you have a product that you can advertise outside with maybe some beautiful scenery behind it, or maybe it's got to be inside. Your brand will have its own style, its own message. And what content resources do you have? Do you have a dedicated brand manager? Do you have a dedicated ad manager, someone who can be doing this, or is it just you on your own? Do you have hours a week that you can focus on this? Do you have maybe a chance to go out on a really sunny day and take loads and loads of pictures that you can then drip feed into your streams over a long time? These are all questions that you need to be thinking through. So which one social platform would you focus on first? We've mentioned Instagram and TikTok in a previous slide. We mentioned Facebook. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's Twitter, X. Maybe it's YouTube. Maybe it's LinkedIn. Maybe it's one of any other countless channels that exist out there. So have a think about that. What single content strategy would you prioritize to maximize resonance and conversions there? And it's not necessarily a one size fits all. Maybe you're launching a brand and you've got some time before the 4th quarter where sales really take off. Maybe it's just brand recognition at this point. Then maybe it's utility of that particular product, and then maybe it's actually driving sales for that product or services as you get closer to the 4th quarter, maybe. So jot down the one platform and the one specific content tactic you'd leverage to effectively establish your brand's presence in social media. Go back to my Zoom screen here and get caught up in a couple of comments. So AK earlier mentioned that Etsy and eBay were platforms of choice, and that would be wooden trays and candles. Beautiful. Very, very beautiful. Yes, I can see how that would be a match. I'm assuming a lot of this would be handmade, and therefore there would be a little bit of discrepancy one to the other. Maybe the wood that you would get would not have exactly the same grain patterns, or the knots would be in different places. So yeah, Etsy and eBay would be absolutely perfect for you. And Catherine, hi Catherine, says, like eBay and Amazon for fashion, absolutely. And I like Etsy for gifts and unusual collectibles, like to get gifts for friends and family. Perfect, absolutely perfect. All those are very, very valid points. Fashion on Amazon, certainly that would be a product that you can replicate very, very easily. So if you have products that maybe might be customized or might be handmade, Amazon will have a place for you. But chances are it will be better on eBay or on Etsy. If you have products maybe with stripes or different color patterns or so on that don't quite line up from one copy to the next. Again, think about that as an Amazon marketplace on the handmade or custom part of their marketplaces, their platforms rather, or indeed on eBay or Etsy. Okay, I don't see any comments about socials. There we go. AK is talking about TikTok as a social platform and using the content strategy aimed for conversions and sales. Perfect, absolutely. So remember, if you were on the webinar last session, I mentioned that the ideal for Amazon is to have one product coming into their warehouse and immediately that product gets sold and goes out of their warehouse. Wouldn't that be fantastic? That would be a perfect world. It doesn't always work like that, so there is effort and there is work to do to increase your conversions and sales and present your product in the best possible light, given the templates and the opportunities that each platform would enable you to. Okay, so I'm going to continue on. I don't see any further chats. Thank you very much, AK and Catherine, for your comments. And we'll move on to the next slide. Now, we've talked a lot about product. We're looking now at food service. Again, this is going to be a conversation that we might need to have on a one-to-one basis, so please do book those sessions with me. But think about the delivery partnership model. Companies like Deliveroo, Uber Eats, and various other similar platforms, even Amazon has a food delivery platform. Think about those as ones that you'll consider getting your product out to the marketplace. Think about your local marketplace, extending your reach beyond maybe the high street, beyond the highly trafficked streets and pavements outside your restaurant or your kitchen. There are some great opportunities here, and you'd have to explore each one of these marketplaces to see which one is right for you, or maybe go on to multiple marketplaces. So again, a lot of it depends on how busy you are already, what you want to promote, even thinking about platforms like Too Good To Go. So if you've used that is a platform that enables restaurants and cafes and so forth to sell off food that's about to expire, that didn't sell through the day. So after the breakfast rush, the coffees and croissants that didn't get sold by 11 o'clock, noon hours, whatever, that can be listed on Too Good To Go, still sold at a discount, and minimize the risk of food waste. Do you offer services, but in contrast to the example that I gave earlier, which might be professional services with longer term engagements, do you offer shorter term services? Are you graphics designers? Do you build websites? Do you do Shopify installations? Can you write articles or do little bits of research? These types of services that are truly in the gig economy might be a couple of hours, might be a day, a couple of days. These are the sorts of things that you might want to list on Fiverr. So this marketplace has been around for a good 10 years, and it connects up buyers and sellers from all over the world. The nice advantage here is that a buyer might have a need for to request reviews, as we see in that pink box, or logo creation, as we see in the green box on the left, or maybe video creation, or doing voiceovers. Some one-off activity where they don't necessarily want to hire professional services where they would be locked into a longer term engagement. Fiverr is great for this. In fact, you get some surprising results off of Fiverr as well. About 8 years ago, I hired a fellow to help me with some short-term marketing requirements. And he was so good, he wound up working for me, and we've developed a really good friendship for the last roughly 7 to 8 years. So you do get some really good experiences. What started off as just a 5-hour engagement, it actually lasted well over 7 years as a full-time gig. So as a seller, I found that immensely helpful, that I could trust this resource who came to me. And as a buyer, well, maybe life takes, or yeah, as a seller of services, maybe life takes you in a different direction. And you expect, well, maybe you can build up a client base, but actually you get some quite lengthy engagements on the back of that. So do think about Fiverr. Managing multi-channel. So we've talked about a lot of these platforms in isolation, one from the other. I alluded earlier to the fact that my product, my main marketplace for my product is on Amazon, but I have some middleware that connects that up to eBay. So if I get a customer on eBay, automatically Amazon will fulfill that. I pay a bit of a premium for that, but it's nice to have that extra customer. And what that helps me do is gets economies of scale in my product. So instead of going over to my supplier and ordering 450 units of something because I know that's what's going to sell on Amazon, I might have a look at eBay and say, well, actually, I can sell another 50 units on that. That brings me up to 500 units, 450 plus 50. And maybe that's a threshold for getting some economies of scale and discounts on my product. So it makes sense for me to put that extra effort in and to have that extra potentially cost in terms of synchronizing all those marketplaces together. I also sell on The Range. So that's, as I mentioned earlier, a UK department store with probably a couple of dozen locations, fairly large physical department stores up and down the country. They've been going for the better part of 20 years, but their marketplace has been around for about 2 years, 2 to 3 years, something like that. And I was one of the first sellers onto their marketplace. I don't get a lot of traffic for my particular product, but still, it helps. It's of interest to me, and I'm looking at some other platforms to have some additional sales. Every little helps, as the phrase goes, I say. You want to be looking at maybe centralizing your inventory. That's your biggest challenge, is to really look at how much inventory you have and make sure that that is controlled across all these different marketplaces. eBay does not necessarily talk to Amazon on its own. The Range doesn't talk to eBay or Amazon on their own either. You need to have that middleware that knows how much product you have. If you've only got 50 units of something in an Amazon warehouse, it will be a big problem if you sell 50 to Amazon customers and a further 50 to eBay customers and a further 50 to Range customers. You've only got 50 to start with. If you've made an error in pricing, for example, all of a sudden you could get swamped by orders. You're going to have to fulfill those orders. If you've been on the kind of at the end of a very successful social marketing campaign, social media campaign, and you want traffic and they're all buying at the right price and the right product and all that great stuff, and you're directing them to multiple platforms, you got to make sure that the product is there to deliver to them. Otherwise, they're going to face disappointment. And you will probably fall afoul of the terms of service that each one of those platforms offers. If they get a customer because you say that you have a product and all of a sudden you don't have that product anymore, that's a problem. Okay. And then you'll be wanting to look at tools to help unify your metrics. A simple one will be an accounting package. I happen to use Xero, but there's also QuickBooks. There are many other packages around. And there's some middleware that will allow you to attach your Amazon sales history to an accounting package. Xero helps me integrate and unify all those metrics. Some of my services, as I say, I deliver walking tours. I use Stripe for that. And I have a separate website, and customers will come and buy that product on that website or that service on that website. Again, I can connect up my Stripe to Xero, and I can kind of have a unified package there of the goods and services that I offer. Thinking about the multiple platforms, think about your hybrid model. Do you have a product which you can then offer a consulting service for? Do you have a cooking product, and are you a good chef? Can you offer your skills on a services platform to go off and cook for someone in addition to the product that you're actually selling? How about DIY and trades? Tools. Do you sell, I don't know, hammers? Are you a carpenter? Can you then go off and sell your service elsewhere? When you start opening up to these multiple platforms, think about aligning your brand. Each one needs to look as consistent to the next as it possibly can. So if you have a logo, make sure that the logo appears in the same color scheme, the same size, the same degree of clarity, the same location, wherever you possibly can on each one of those marketplaces. Now, you are constrained by the templates that we talked about earlier. Amazon will have its template, eBay will have its template, and so on. But try to be as consistent as possible. Think about the text that you're publishing, the About Us, the About Me section. So use that text consistently across the board. You want customers to know that they're dealing with the same organization, the same quality, the same skill set, regardless of which platform they actually buy from. Think about your balances that you need to make, speed versus cost. And how do you sell that? How do you translate that to a customer fee? So for example, Amazon is pretty good about its fulfillment, and usually it's next day delivery. But on some of the other marketplaces, eBay, the range, that sort of thing, you will be responsible for shipping out product from your warehouse. Unless you have a very sophisticated warehouse system in place, think about where you've set the bar selling on Amazon. Customers are now expecting next day delivery. Well, how are you going to build that into your pricing structure if indeed you want to offer that same level of service? How are you going to build that into your pricing structure on eBay and the range and others? You've got to be thinking about that. Optimizing of your logistics, looking at comparing rates and shipping. So there are loads of third-party services that you can be drawing in to help you run your business effectively. Thinking about label printers and scanning. If you sell a handful of products and you're selling consistently on Amazon, maybe you want to build in that Amazon barcode directly into the product and have it manufactured so you don't have to pay extra for a label printer and the labels and the steps to over sticker that product. However, if you make a number of changes, you don't want to go down the effort of asking your manufacturer to build that into the product packaging if it's going to change. So maybe it is better to label individual products until you get some consistency of product down the road. Looking at additional growth levers, API integrations. So API is simply a bridge that connects two types of software together. There's a software product that I alluded to earlier. It's called Joe Lister. Joe Lister connects up my Amazon store with my eBay store. That can be thought of as an API. So there's some integration there where Joe Lister transmits information from one shop to the other about has a product been sold, which one, what quantity, has it been paid for, what's the address, et cetera, et cetera. Think about your brand or influencer collaborations and whether or not you want to issue vouchers that they can use, that they can promote out to the rest of their kind of community and their users. Think about your wholesale and future innovations. So when you are have a vast quantity of product that you're trying to sell, this is your B2B offer. Are you making candles in the hundreds, in the thousands? Do you want to be selling that directly to someone like the range for them to put into their stores and push outwards? So think about whether it's going to be that B2C option or that B2B option. This is our last question, and then we'll be wrapping up in a few slides. So think about your hybrid expansion plan. When you're growing a brand, when you're growing beyond a single channel like Amazon, most brands use a strategic combination of marketplaces, owned sites, so that'd be like your Shopify, and social platforms over time, also known as a hybrid model. Think about the resource implication that this is going to have for you. How much effort are you going to have in setting up, in listing, in connecting them, in making sure that you've got your inventory ready to supply, in connecting them up together, and maybe growing beyond their boundaries. Once you're on Amazon in the UK, maybe you'll be looking at going out to the EU or America. So think about the expansion options there. What are your objectives? Think about your customers, capabilities, timeline to address. Question number one, what percent of immediate focus would you place on marketplaces versus owned platforms? So there's no one right answer here. Thinking about your product or service, you want to go to the Shopify environment where you have complete control, but you're going to have to work to get your audience? Or do you want to get to the Amazons of the world or other platforms where you give up substantial control, but hey, just like in my case, it works in the background and they're just selling stuff in the background. Number two, what timeline would you map out for evolving the channel mix? I would argue that if you have not yet onboarded onto an e-commerce platform, if you're new to this space, or if you've got new product, maybe you've got considerable experience in e-commerce, but you've got new product, this is a great time of year to start. Things are relatively quiet. It's relatively easy to list products, to go through a bit of trial and error, to do a little bit of experimentation before the real madness of August, September, October, November, fourth quarter sets in. So maybe make a note of some hybrid channel model, what the focus is of your hybrid channel model, and what you would want to implement for your brand. Take a moment or two to do that. Put your answers in chat, please. I appreciate if a lot of this will be confidential as well, so don't feel forced to write anything there. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so we'll maybe just go through the next few slides here and look towards winding down. And there we go. We actually do have an opportunity for questions now, but I'd like you to use this chart as a takeaway. Maybe you can take a screenshot of this now. This is your top 3 action plan that Brandwin has designed for you. There's space there for your name, for today's date, but think about the first 3 actions that you want to take, whether it's researching marketplaces, whether it's actually committing to and onboarding onto a platform or a new marketplace, whether it's considering what products you have, maybe listing new products on an existing platform. What is it that you want to do? And who is going to do it? When are they going to do it? I have been mentioning a few times that now is a good time of year to do that experimentation, to make those trials, to see what works, but it's going to have to happen relatively quickly. I would like to see you with your products and services pretty much bedded in within the next 3 to 4 months and just allow them to run. You're going to need that listing fairly solid throughout the summer months because you're going to be doing a lot of planning and hopefully selling a lot over the fourth quarter. You don't have a lot of time in fourth quarter to make adjustments to those listings. So as we've been mentioning, this is the second in a series of 3 webinars. We had our first one on February the 6th, a fortnight ago. This is our second one tonight, online marketplaces and platforms, which I hope you found useful. And then the third one, growing your e-commerce business, that's 2 weeks from tonight. That is going to be on March the 5th. That's in an area, and we'll be talking about AI and some other tools that you can use to leverage and grow your business. Let me take questions now, and then in a moment we will wrap up and let you go and have your evening. I don't see any new questions that have come through. The last one I've got is from AK, which we've talked about. That was the TikTok question. Are there any additional questions that have come through? Anything that you'd like me to recover? Great. So on that note, I'd like to thank you very much. I'd like to thank you for committing an hour of your evening to this webinar. I hope you found it useful. I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to sign up for the free one-to-one session with me. It's about an hour long. We'll do a bit of a deep dive into your business. I'm available to answer any questions that you might have, be it on getting onto an e-commerce platform in the first place, or tailoring that particular platform, or expanding out from one platform to another, or indeed anything more sophisticated, maybe looking at some of the other aspects of your business. Very, very happy to help. Catherine would like to make an appointment, which is great. Let me just do a copy and paste of the appointment link, which we see on the slide right now. Let me see if I can grab this. Oops, not quite sure what's happened there. I wanted to grab that slide. Apologies for this. Okay, for some reason that's not working, but Catherine, if you are registered, didn't work last time. Catherine, let me share with you my email address here, and I will be very, very happy. Great. Catherine, would you please email me directly, and I'll help sort that out for you. And indeed, anyone else who wants to book, feel free to email me directly. I'll send you the link. And of course, as long as you're registered for this webinar, we will send you an email after, just with confirmation of the link. It'll be a couple of days before that happens. But there'll be a link to the webinar itself and a link to the booking site as well. But if you're keen to book now, please do send me an email, and I'll respond to that this evening, and I'll send you the link so you can choose a date and time that works for you, and we can have that session. Indeed, if you know any other Brent-based SMEs that could not make it onto the session, feel free to let them know. Very happy for you to share the link that I'm going to send to you. And I'd love to meet with them as well. It's a limited offer, so it would have to be within the next few weeks. And there are limited spots available, but we do still have a few spots that are available. Okay. On that note, again, thank you very, very much. Thank you for all of your questions, your participation, and I will let you leave and enjoy the rest of your evening together. Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.